Pluralsight CEO Aaron Skonnard. You went public on May 17th. What was that day like?
Kind of like a wedding day. You know, it sort of felt like that a little bit to me. Like you think about it a lot, you're planning for it, all this time, all this energy. And then all of a sudden you're in it. You're like, wait, this is like all happening too fast. Like I want to slow it down, but you can't really slow it down. And then all of a sudden it's done and you're on a plane, you're flying back home and it's over.
And it was also a very big day for the state of Utah.
Utah is a really tight community and we want everyone here to win. And even though they had like no financial incentive for us to do good, like they were there cheering for us and it was awesome.
But why go public with all the private money that's out there?
The minute we took our first round of financing as a company, we knew we would have to make this decision at some point. So we went 10 years without raising any money, just all bootstrapped, just each of the founders put in $5,000. That was our initial capital. We never raised any outside money from a bank or an investor until almost a decade later. And so for the first 10 years of the business, we never thought about it because we didn't have to. And we didn't really want to, you know, but then that day, it was, you know, December of 2012 when we closed our first investment with Insight Venture Partners. We knew we were sort of crossing into this new place where at some point we would have to decide, how are we going to give those investors liquidity? And that's what the whole sort of that's what motivates the conversation, like motivates the question. You know, at some point you got to give those investors a return, and usually they're looking for it within 3 to 5 years. Sometimes they'll wait as long as 7, depending on the investment group, but they're going to need it at some point. That's how they operate. Yeah. And so then the question is, well, what are the different options for getting them out? You know, at some point. And you could have a bigger investor come in, so a bigger fish comes in and eats the smaller fish. And those usually look like private equity firms at our scale, because they've got to have a lot of capital to invest to buy them out, right? At this point, that would have looked like, you know, paying Insight it would have cost about $1 billion to buy them out, right? So you got to have a big investment firm, and the big investment firms only want to invest that kind of capital if they can have full control of the company. So that's one option, and may or may not look good depending on your circumstance. There's no judgment in it. Like some companies, that's a great thing to do. But you know, for us, that didn't look right. You know, another option is to, you know, just keep going as long as possible, delaying it, you know, and just not do that, like not invite more investors in. You know, but that really doesn't work for very long. Like there's just sort of like a ticking time bomb that's going. So you can't just ignore it indefinitely. And then the third option is to take the company public. You know, I mean, those are really the only options. Yeah. We're committed to having a company that's successful, that's producing growth, that's producing performance. And so if we're really committed to that, then let's just get back to the real question, which is, what's the most effective way to provide return to our investors while still allowing us to maintain control of the company for years to come?
To me, the real question is, what was your return on that $5,000 you put in? You don't have to answer that. How do you decide, all right, it's time?
Well, there are windows, you know, like you can't just go whenever, you know, because first of all, the investors have to be there. So like that's why no one's going right now in July and August, because all the investors are on vacation. So if you were to go do a roadshow and visit all these investors, they're not going to be there. So you can't do an effective roadshow during the summer. So that's why you're not seeing any IPOs happening now. And you also have to time it around your quarters, and when your quarters end and when you publish your results. Your finance teams need time to like close the quarter and then publish everything, get it to the SEC, and then, you know, make sure you're clean with accurate information like when you go. So you kind of have to look at all those ingredients and say, okay, well, like based on our quarters and what results we want to show, like right when we go, here are the different windows that we see and when we know the investors will be there. And then you also, the other ingredient you don't really control is like who else is going, and is this like a super busy time? And do I want to get mixed up along with all these other companies, or do I want to be like on a week that, you know, is just not going to be that busy?
How do you pick which exchange? Can you answer that? Like which stock exchange?
So that one, it's really a marketing decision. Like in the end, like I thought there was a lot more to it than there really was. Like both of the exchanges have things that they're really great at, and they have great strengths, and we like both of them. We would have been happy going on either one, I think, in the end. And so you really want to look at like the day of, like what experience are we trying to create, and how are we going to magnify this message, and that's what the exchanges provide. There's also an economic calculus around like, what are the fees you're paying? That's pretty straightforward across both of them, so it's not super significant. And then the one that just feels like it fits your brand the best. And in the end, the reason we chose NASDAQ was because we felt like they could really deliver on our marketing strategy. And two, they're like known for tech. And Pluralsight is the tech learning platform. And we just felt like the brands really aligned well, and it would be a great place for us to call home.
What's the process like of filling out the S1? Because I've heard it's just insane, and you should probably explain what an S1 is.
The S1 is basically the registration document that you file with the SEC that describes everything about the company, the potential investment, and all the risks involved. They're very thorough documents. Like it's basically, covering every aspect of the company, how it operates, how it works, the finances, the executive team, like all that stuff. And then they put this lens on it around the potential risks for investors to be warned about. And that's the hard part, because like you have to author this. Like you have to say, okay, well, what are the risks? Like one of the big risks in ours, because of my position and my control of the company, was like what would happen if I just vanished or I died, or like stuff like that. Like that's in there. Risks around competition, and risks around like, what happens if this go-to-market strategy doesn't work like we're saying it's going to work? What, the risks around costs. Like, what if we keep spending like we're doing and we don't see these results over here? Like, and so like it's a really long document. Like ours was probably like 200 pages. And it has to be written by someone. So that's like our team, and then our lawyers. We hired a law firm that had done this over and over again. Wilson Sonsini from the Bay Area, really good. And the team that wrote that document, they're the unsung heroes of the whole event.
How do you think about your leadership team as you're about to go public, right? I mean, do you need to change that up a little bit? Do you need to start building and hiring, different types of people as you're building this executive team? I mean, how did you do it?
My recommendation to any CEO who looks like me, where I was very inexperienced, this was the first time I'd ever done it, was you got to have a few key people on your team who have. And I don't know, it doesn't matter exactly who, but for me, it looked like I had a CFO who I hired who had 10 years of public company operating experience. So he's been around IPOs, he's been through them, and he's been, he had operated as a public company CFO for a decade. And then I had my head of marketing who had also been operating in public companies. My head of sales also operated in a public company environment. And then there was like the other half of the team who hadn't, including me. And that gave us the right level of balance, like along with the advisors, when you build the rest of the ecosystem, like the team around you, to like really have more confidence as you're moving through it. And my CFO was like a key partner for me, because I could like turn to him in those moments when I didn't know who to believe and say, who should I believe? And he would have an answer, and he'd have conviction around it. He's like, this is what this really looks like. It's like, oh, okay, let's move. And you can make fast decisions.
How do you know if your test the waters meetings have been successful or not? And also, what is a test the waters meeting?
Yeah, the testing the waters is the practice roadshow. So you, like about a month or two before you actually go on the road, the SEC allows you to go out and basically do a set of meetings for a week with investors to test your roadshow presentation, essentially. And so you've already filed with them. They've already seen everything that's in your S1. They've picked it apart. They've really, it's like they know everything about your business at that point. And they make you show them the deck you're going to use. And then they ensure that that's consistent with everything that's in the S1, so you're not saying different things out on the road. And then they let you go test it in this sort of controlled environment. The bankers have a responsibility there to create the right process. You can't leave any information behind with them. You know, when you're a passionate CEO of a company, you want to go in there and just say, look, this is what we're going to go do. It's going to be awesome. Like, there's going to be no problem. We're going to overcome anything that's in our way. Like, this is going to work. Just give me your money. I just need your money to make this work. But just believe me, you know, and that's, you know, to be a successful, you know, entrepreneur, you have to have an element of that in you, like all the time. Like, you won't win if that's not how you walk around the world. And so I think it's a good thing that we have some of these checks and balances in place, because you need to be sort of checked at times. And that's really what the SEC does. In the end, it was just like 5 days of, you know, meetings back to back all day. And you just go in there, and by the end of that 5 days, you have a really good sense for, is the presentation working? Are you creating the right level of confidence in them that you would want to see to build confidence, to like have confidence to take the company public? And what are the questions you're going to get asked? And sort of like, what are the big concerns about the business? Yeah. You know, and that you take that back, and then you work on it more. And you might update the S1 a little bit, you'll update your deck, update your video, and then you're ready to actually go.
Explain what we mean by company story in the context of taking a company public.
Yeah, I mean, this for me was one of the most challenging and fun aspects of this process, was having to take 14 years of work and boil it down into 14 minutes of content. Like, that's essentially what you have. Like, and you show up into these meetings, just like a half an hour meeting, or maybe 45 minutes. And you've got to then deliver the whole presentation in 10 to 15 minutes. And then you got to have ample time to answer all of their questions. And so you have to get like crystal clear, very focused on what matters. And you got to up level it. And that's really hard for CEOs to do, because you like want to get into like all the nooks and crannies, and this is this amazing thing, but you got to be like talking up here. Yeah. And here's why this really matters. Here's why we're going to win. Here's where we're going to go compete in the marketplace to really make a difference. And this is why you can count on us having a strong competitive moat. The investors are really just trying to answer one question in the end. And the question is this: can I count on that CEO? That's it. It's confidence in the CEO. And if the answer is yes, then they'll invest. If the answer is no, they'll pass.
I have so much confidence in you right now, after everything, don't you? You have an unbelievable amount of confidence in this guy. What are those Q&A sessions like? What were they like for you?
So, you know, it was most of the roadshow, actually. Yeah. You have to be dialed on Q&A. And one of the things I saw in myself was an opportunity to upgrade my ability to do effective Q&A. And also presentation. Like, I wanted to work on my presentation and improve it. And so we hired a IPO coach. Wow. Yeah, his name's Jerry Wiseman. And he's in the Bay Area. He's worked on IPOs since like Cisco, Yahoo days. Most of the awesome IPOs he's trained before they went on the road. And he teaches in that workshop, it's like 3 days of training, 3 full days, which is like really hard to carve out when you're in the middle of all this, but like I knew it would make a difference, because most of the IPO was this. It was like answering questions. And so we went in there committed to learn these skills, and he really helped us dial it up. And I could talk more about what that looks like, but in the end, it made it possible for us to answer any question. Like, you have to be committed to answering every question. A lot of times we think we get a pass on some questions. Like, oh, that's not a good question, or I'm not going to answer that for whatever reason. But like the thing you have to know is like, you're asking for their money, right? They're taking a huge risk on you, and you are obligated to answer every question. But the way you answer it is where the art is. And you want to be able to answer the question with accuracy and then leave them in a place of confidence. And there's a whole method to how you do that is a life skill. Like, if you can learn how to do this, you can show up anywhere and just kill it.
How did you respond to like real-time feedback from the investors, right? Like, I'm sure some of them were questions, but some of them was probably just like feedback.
If we found someone that was willing to like share those things with us, it's like, oh, there's something there. We should spend more time talking about it. So we'd take notes, and then the other thing we would do is like periodically, a couple times a day, we would check in with this app they gave us. They give you an app, so when you walk out of every meeting, you can see real time whether or not the investors are placing an order. So that's like your real time dashboard. And those are they have metrics, the bankers have metrics, like you gotta know like what your conversion rate is with all of these one-on-one meetings, and the conversion rate for the group meetings, and then like your oversubscribed amounts. You heard people talk about how oversubscribed this IPO was. So they've got benchmarks now, so they know like by day 2, day 3, how you're tracking relative to all the other IPOs who came before you, which is super helpful. So you're looking at the app and you're like, oh, something's not working quite right, or like, is this good or bad? And so we're having those conversations with the bankers, and then the bankers are talking to their syndicate desk. The syndicate desk is where all the orders come into. And when they talk to the investors about like their decision or their potential order, they're asking questions. They're hearing feedback that they wouldn't have given to us. And then they're relaying that back to us to say, hey, you're still having an issue on the competitive moat. Like we've heard 5 times now today that they're not convinced on the competitive moat. You need to work on that. So we would take the notes from the meetings that we saw. We would take this feedback from the syndicate desk and from the app. And then like between every meeting, we would just say, okay, how do we upgrade it? How do we answer that question better? What are the Roman columns? That's a Jerry Wiseman language thing. Like what's the right technique for answering that one that's gonna leave them in a place of confidence? And how do we just continue to upgrade? So we'd spend every car drive, every plane flight, like just constantly like working to upgrade it. And the thing that I got committed to with my team, it was my CFO, my head of product, Nate Walkinshaw. So it was James Budge, Nate Walkinshaw, and me in most of the meetings. And we made this commitment ahead of time that we would make every meeting better than the last. And I'm proud to report, like the key metric that we really took a lot of pride in, like because we were just so competitive, like we just had to win. Our one-on-one conversion rate was almost perfect. We only had one group that didn't convert. Wow. So out of 53 meetings, and you do group meetings where you like go to a hotel, right, and you're like speaking to 50 people, so those don't count. Right. But you go to the big investors like the Fidelities, the T. Rowe's, BlackRock, and those are one-on-ones. You're just giving them one-on-one time for 30 to 45 minutes, and you want to convert them because that really tells you the quality of your story. And we just had a great success with that, and I think it was because of this principle, because of our commitment to like just continually improving. By the end, like those meetings were so dialed. And it was because of the process we used and our commitment to like learn and upgrade like every step of the way. And that was a big lesson for me.
How does the market feel about Utah and what's happening here in Silicon Slopes just generally?
We heard a lot like in every meeting about how excited they were about what was happening in Utah. That was like a common thread. Like we'd go in, we'd say we're from Utah, say, oh, there's a lot happening in Utah. Like that was like the common theme. And they liked it. Like they liked the fact that we were from Utah. Like they didn't see it like it was this disadvantage. They actually saw it like, oh, that's cool. Like we've seen a couple of cool companies from Utah over the last little while, and we've heard there's a lot happening there, a lot more coming. I want to pay attention to this one. So it kind of like I noticed that it, like maybe 5-10 years ago was more of a liability, and now it's more of a strength. And it's really, they're paying attention. We just want everyone in Utah to win. The current class, the next class after that. Like if we're really doing our job right as a community, and as leaders in the community, like we're creating that.
Yeah.
Like every group that comes next should like be able to learn from the ones that came before, and with this whole momentum and brand we're building around the ecosystem, it's just gonna facilitate better and better companies, more and more impact for the world, and Utah will become, a tech titan, like, around the world.